Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Township Board's business meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone is here tonight on the boards, so we obviously have a quorum. We can do business, and we'll get going with additions. I have an addition. I'd like to add an action item to accept an offer on the Meridian Roadhouse, which was donated to the animal shelter, put up for sale, I believe, last Friday, and sold by Sunday. So, or a good offer came in by Sunday. So, I would like to add that to accept that offer.
Support.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Hearing and seeing none. Any other? Not seeing any. I would like a motion.
Move to accept the agenda
As amended.
as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. We have our agenda with 5 action items now. Okay. Our next, we don't have a presentation, so our next item is public comment. 3 minutes, give your name and address where you live, and this is on agenda items. And I can see Kathy tonight. Yay, thank you for moving to where I can see you. Kathy Walker. Good evening, Kathy.
This is not an agenda item, but I think you'll understand why I'm saying this before the meeting. I don't know if you know, but Woody Clark passed away. Most people have not heard, and I didn't want to wait till the end because most people won't be watching till the end. He didn't mind. He died April 21st, and he was 83, and he was preceded to death by his... Oh, thank you, Don. He was preceded to death by his father, William Clark, and his mother, Jane. Clark and many other family members remember him as a graduate of the class of '56 at Grosse Seal, and he served in the U.S. Navy. He worked for Ford Motor Company for 30 years, and the highlight of his life was boating, and I think coming to the meetings just to, you know, shake things up. He was really a nice man. You had to get past the gruffness, but he was truly a nice man.
Character, but a nice character.
He was. He kind of reminded me of my Tim, only a little rougher. Though there were days. The visitation will be at Martinson Funeral, Trenton Chapel on April 29th from 2 to 7 p.m. And there will be a service by Reverend Robin E. Haneker from the First Congressional Church of Flat Rock. And in lieu of flowers, which is such a waste of money, but that's my opinion, and in honor of Woody, it is requested donations be made to the First Congressional Church of Flat Rock. If writing a check, please make it payable to the First Congressional Church. If mailing a donation, the address below is the First Congressional Church, P.O. Box 157, 26250 Huron River Drive, Flat Rock, 48134. Again, it's a lovely man. If you can stop by on Friday, I'm going to make an effort. And I think... just to know that Craig Pilkington, they're having a memorial for him on Saturday at Perdino's in the afternoon. Another person who was well known in the community. Thank you. I hope you didn't mind, but I knew you wouldn't wait till the end.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, somewhat of a shock. Certainly, Woody for the longest time was a fixture at our meetings, and actually we knew he wasn't showing up of late because of his health. But he was something else, and we will miss him. Thank you, Kathy, for that. Any other public comment on agenda items? Yes.
Perhaps someone should volunteer tonight to ask if there were any legal fees in Woody's honor.
Anything else? For agenda items? Yeah. Mr. Heil?
I'm Bill Heil. I live on East River Road, and I just want to express some concern about the process by which this all has accrued to this point with these items on the agenda, primarily the police millage and the millage for our township. I'm not claiming that I see everything accurately. I'm speaking for myself, and my main concern is what I perceive to be an absence of some clarity on the devils in the details of our budget for this coming year that's being passed. I believe that our actual gross revenues this year are bigger than they were last year, if for no other reason than the fact that property values, the taxable value, has a way of rising. And we use that to pay our bills. At the same time, we have had within the police department certain economies because of the lack of salary and benefits paid for people who weren't fulfilling positions. And I don't understand what happened to the monies that accrued with that. The bottom line feeling I have from this, and I know I'm talking in generalities, is that if you're an ordinary taxpayer, you've got a fixed income and it's on a pension, or your household is sitting there. Our taxpayers, in bottom line, especially if we reduce, for example, one police officer, are going to put the taxpayers in a position where they are paying more in absolute dollars and getting technically less service. And I'm of the opinion, from remarks I've made and things I've watched over time, that had there been foresight in past years to these kinds of things, I called them a pinch, I tried to say that tactfully, it might have been possible to forego that. I don't expect anybody who is leading this community to know everything about everything. It's nothing to be ashamed of if you don't. But if you get somebody to help you with what you don't know, you can make better quality decisions. And most of us that I'm looking at in our own lives already do this. Probably most of us don't pay our own, or we pay, but we don't calculate our own income tax. We don't even go to the same medical health care professional to do our teeth, to do our feet, unless we put our foot in our mouth. But what I'm getting at is that we have all these people, lawyers, maybe even Indian chiefs, doctors. We should do something similar to that as representatives of our community for the benefit of our community. And when we address some of the issues we have, like how do we grow our tax base, or how do we make sure we're getting the most for the money we spend, there are professionals who can help us. And I would encourage you to consider funding more of that help to help you make better quality decisions. And that pertains to what's on this agenda tonight, the fact that we're dealing with these police. And it's my understanding that that budget doesn't include all the police force on hand that we used to have. It's going to have a reduction.
You're off on that, but
Well, then
this is, all that's on the agenda is the renewal of the millage that's already there. That's what's on the agenda.
That's what, thank you. Maybe I owe you an apology. I'm not here to hit anybody with an axe, but I have those concerns and I'm sincere about them, Jim.
I know you always are, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing any more public comment, we'll move to consent agenda. Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Budney. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda 22-005, which consists of the following items: minutes of the April 11th, 2022 regular meeting, check registers and invoices dated through April 14th, 2022, accept a resignation from the Airport Advisory Committee, the Great Lakes Water Authority Highland Park Resolution, and Downtown Development Authority reappointment.
Support?
Thank you. Guys, our motions have to come with a support. Okay, any questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none. We have a motion before us to approve consent agenda 22-005, which includes the minutes of the April 11th, 2022 regular meeting, check register dated through April 14th, 2022, Airport Advisory Committee resignation, the Great Lakes Water Authority Highland Park resolution, which, by the way, that's to withhold the money that we would be paying for the Highland Park bad debt, the downtown and a Downtown Development Authority reappointment. I'm going to do a roll call vote on this. Start with Joe.
Aye.
Jameson.
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Uda.
Aye.
Aye.
And Mike. Aye. And I vote aye. The consent agenda passes. That takes us to our action items, and Mr. Nadeau, I believe the first one is yours.
Thank you. Based on a recommendation by the Groseal DPS Commission, the Groseal Township Board approves contract extensions with Priority Waste through November 14th, 2024.
Support.
Our contract with Priority, the first phase of it, the first 3 years expires November of 2022, and the original contract incorporated 2 one-year extensions. And the commission is recommending that both of those one-year extensions be accepted. Derek, you want to add anything to that?
There was a lot of history, purpose, and explanation included in the action item that was in your packet. Just in summary for the residents, as the treasurer had mentioned, this would take our contract with Priority through November 14th of 2024. There are probably less vendors for trash service now as compared to probably 3 years ago when we had originally gone to bid. So the market hasn't been flooded with new providers that might warrant, going to bid on this. We're all aware that the inflation rate has gone through the roof. Meanwhile, the terms and conditions that we had associated with these extensions are below what the current rate of inflation is. So as far as value goes, I think that exists with these 2 extensions. We have been impressed by Priority service. There are complaints like you have with any trash service, but we've been very impressed with their ability to address them and do those in an efficient manner. So that's more than likely a lot of the reasons that the DPS Commission made the recommendation to the board here to go ahead and select these 2 options. One other item worth noting, our disposal contract is with Riverview Land Preserve. That contract runs through 2024. So the timing of these actually work out very well, and they're originally planned this way, I believe, so that these options would coincide with the conclusion of that initial term of the Riverview Land Preserve contract. So if the township did decide to go out to bid for both disposal and waste pickup, that would be an option that the township would have with these dates coinciding with one another. So we're more than happy to answer any questions that you guys might have regarding any of these items.
So the last time we discussed waste removal, because of the economic downturn, there was some difficulties with recycling. Are we still same boat today? Pretty much very limited recycling. It's not profitable.
Yeah, there is probably more cost associated with recycling than there is money coming back from the commodity. I think things maybe are a little bit better than a couple of years ago, but there still is a bit of a challenge with, recycling being something that is profitable. At the end of the day, we pay for that service, and we pay for the pickup and the disposal of the recyclables, and you know, we don't really get much of a credit coming back
Okay.
to offset that cost. I don't know if that answers your question or
It
not.
does,
but-
yeah.
Priority initially had approached us about having or negotiating a new contract. I think that their desire was to extend out farther than just the 2-year option. Part of that reason was so that we could institute some sort of recycling cart program that would be bigger than our 18-gallon carts or our 18-gallon bins, maybe move to a larger 65-gallon recycling container. And the desire to do that was to alleviate some of the problems that they see with, on a windy day, recyclables blowing out of the 18-gallon container. But in talking to DPS about that, there wasn't a ton of interest in that. Number one, because of the term that would be required to amortize that cost across a longer period of time than 2 years. Number two, requesting that our residents use a 65-gallon, you know, container, and how that might
Another
may or
big
may not work
garbage
with
bin.
people, with certain residents. And then obviously, you know, the cost of that purchase that we would have to bear in order to provide that option. So I think the thought with DPS was just to, you know, reevaluate it after the 2-year option as far as the whole package, and then decide, you know, what the priorities of the township are at that point in time, and structure a bid request that incorporates what we want to do, you know, 2 years from now.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? Mike?
The pricing schedule or comparison schedule, I know it's not, you know, apples to apples, our community versus other communities,
Correct.
but our number was higher
Yeah.
than the other communities. I mean, what are the key differences, I mean, that justify the increased price?
It's definitely difficult to tell when you look at that sheet, because each community binds different services. So in our base bid, we have bulk pickup included. We have unlimited, you know, containers that can be picked up. We have a 2-day service. We have a relationship with Riverview where we pay the disposal cost. Our yard waste is built into our base price. So when you take a look at that pricing sheet, they're kind of all over the board depending upon what they have as far as their menu options. But for the similar period of time for the contract with a similar, you know, ratio or type of services, I think we're right in the ballpark. And an easy one to look at, I think, is the Gibraltar package. They don't do curbside recycling, but they do the yard waste pickup, and they do the you know, the pickup curbside on a weekly basis, unlimited. So, you know, we're right in the ballpark along those lines as far as when you take a look at the schedule of services price-wise. So, and when we originally bid this package 3 years ago, Priority was the lowest bidder of all 4 bids that we received. And the increases that we've had built into the contract have basically been 3%. So we're going off of a competitively bid base with a 3% increase or even less than that in subsequent years. So, you know, as far as the competitive nature of the pricing, it's right in the ballpark if you fall back to that original, you know, competitive bid program that we went through 3 years ago. So,
One more question. I know you mentioned in there, nobody's perfect. Our past suppliers weren't perfect. Priorities had some issues. How is their responsiveness compared to waste management, for example,
Good. I want to be very clear. When we went to bid 2.5 years ago for this package, waste management came in at probably 40 to 50% higher in cost. In addition to that, waste management wasn't going to provide bulk pickup, but I think once per month. So when I refer to bulk pickup, I mean trash bags or any items outside of your trash can. So unless you had a 95-gallon trash tote, they wouldn't have picked up anything other than that. So not only were they 40 to 50% more expensive, they also weren't going to provide a service that our residents were accustomed to, and I would venture to say prefer. As far as, and I know you only asked about responsiveness, but I want to talk a little bit real quickly about the level of service, because they really were a non-factor because of cost, but also a non-factor because of the service they are providing. And my understanding is that's continued to be the level of service that they're willing to extend. Speaking of responsiveness, Priority is very responsive. They have a route manager that runs around on Mondays and Tuesdays. If we get a complaint about a missed pickup, we will email that individual, and he will make sure that those pickups occur if they've been missed, or make sure that he indicates, to the staff what needs to be done to try to prevent that from happening again. Once again, they aren't perfect, but I've never come across a trash, hauling company that was. They all have their issues. It's a matter of how they address them, not, necessarily if they occur or they don't occur, so.
Well, and to the question of the totes, I think what Waste Management was also going to require that residents use their particular containers and had to rent those containers. They weren't going to just provide the containers. So we would, the residents themselves would also have been individually on the hook for the number of containers they needed. So it just seemed like a really bad
Right,
offer
and
for
you're
the
absolutely
community.
right. And you would have to, with Waste Management, you had to rent them. You could not buy them, and you could not use somebody else's. Whereas Priority sells us sells the people their containers at basically the same price you'd buy them at Home Depot, even though they're a much better container than you get there.
And it's not mandated that you have to use them. So if you want to use your own trash cans, you can do that. And I know, requiring all the residents to use one dedicated trash, receptacle is a lot of times burdensome, not only because of the cost, but also, you don't want to, if you only have limited trash disposal, you don't want to, store or cart around a 95-gallon container. So that was a consideration. There's really 4 different players in the area. There's GFL, there's Stevens, there's Waste Management, and there's Priority. And, so the options that exist for communities right now, and this ebbs and flows, certain years you might have 7 vendors, other years you might have 2 vendors. It also ebbs and flows depending upon where each community or each business is looking to do business. From a logistical standpoint, to have a core set of operations north of Detroit and one community, south of Detroit doesn't make much sense for you to provide service to that community, because it really logistically doesn't work for you to send trucks down there, when it's only one community. So you'll see pricing dictated based upon, where the companies are doing business. I think what you've seen is Waste Management move more of their operations and prioritize north of Detroit and less in the southern portion. Stevens comes out of Ida or in that area, so they were kind of prioritizing this area. But if they lose a contract in this area and maybe they only had one in the area, it doesn't behoove them, and they don't provide a competitive price in an area they're not doing work. So it's a very dynamic business, and us communities, when we review these contracts, always pay attention to pricing, logistics, where they're doing business, who the competitors are, what the rate of inflation are, what similar bids have gone for, the level of service, their reputation. And I think all those things were taken into consideration when the DPS Commission reviewed whether this should be extended or not. We have a community of 4,000 or so units. You're gonna get complaints, and we try to work with Priority to address those. I think the DPS Commission was not confident that, there was another provider out there that could provide a better service at a more competitive rate. And so that's where the recommendation's coming from.
Seeing none, we have a motion before us based on the recommendation by the Groseal DPS Commission. The Groseal Township Board approve contract extensions with Priority Waste through November 14th, 2024. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. That passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Michael?
Okay. So Millage Renewal maintain current police department operations. shall the expired previously voted increase be renewed and the total tax limitation imposed under Article 9, Section 6 of the Michigan Constitution in Grosedale Township of 1 mil reduced to .9835 mils by the required millage rollbacks be renewed at .9835 mils and levied for a period of 5 years from 2022 through 2026, inclusive to provide funds for the purpose of maintaining the current law enforcement operations on Grosedale, specifically for the police department funds, raising an estimated $674,000 in the first year the millage is approved and levied.
You might add that's the ballot language?
Yes.
And then there will be a yes or a no.
Support.
Thank you.
I think we're required to read that into the record.
Thank you.
Mhm.
History, are we ready for that?
Well, yeah, yeah, it's pretty straightforward, but go ahead.
Well, I think, so this is a renewal millage. It's related to another renewal millage that's on the agenda tonight, to fund the police department. I think it's important to note that even with these millages being approved, the police department, based upon all of the millages that support it, will not be fully funded in year 23-24. In fact, I believe, Ann, and you can help me with this, we're looking at about $250,000 deficit. Is that, that's correct for 23-24? So, recognizing that, Doug Carmack and I think Ann and another number of other people had a meeting on April 18th, Monday, and so actions have begun to extend the 5-year plan and try to accommodate the necessary funding to fully support a police department of 24 people. So that's in place. I think as a follow-up, Jim, I think we met here, yourself, and me, Doug, and Ken Pelland, and those wheels are in motion. But I wouldn't want the public to think that by the approval of these two renewals, that we're in the clear in terms of fully funding the police department. There's work that needs to be done. I know that to the good work of Ann and Dave and a few other people, we have a 5-year high-level plan. It's kind of ambitious. It includes a lot of improvements, including a road millage, so on and so forth. And I support probably everything on the plan. But if we're not successful in securing full funding for the police and fire department, then I see it very difficult for a lot of folks, including myself, to support this plan. So I know the wheels are in motion. I appreciate that, but there's more to be said about this shortage, and I just didn't want the public to think that by approving these two mills here tonight, we're in good shape, because we're not. We're down to 23 right now. We're looking for funding for a 24th, and next year it's going to be even tougher. So that's the history.
Yes, Buddha.
Well, I appreciate what you're telling us, Mike. As Ann made her presentation during our budgeting process, our police department currently takes up, I think, close to 75% of our
100%.
100% of our allocated millage for running the township, plus additional millages that have been voted, like this one. So the budget that we just passed was predicated on these millages continuing forward. And in future discussions, the next level will have to be, do we need to change the way we are funding this department? So it's the healthcare costs, it's the employee costs,
It's all the costs.
it's all the costs that drive up. And because our property values and what we can bring in as tax revenue isn't keeping up with that, we are falling short, and we have to find a way to do that. Just to clarify, that's a little different than defunding the police, which is a term that was developed by Black Lives Matter that wanted to take the money police departments used and transfer it to other things like education, health, and welfare. We are not defunding the police. We are hitting a budgeting wall because our expenses are exceeding the revenues that we can bring in. And so that those are two very completely different animals. And I think everyone on this board would agree that we are working hard to find a way to keep our police department fully funded and fully staffed. But right now, we didn't have the funds to do that without making other cuts in departments that we are also legally required to keep fully funded. So that's the space between the rock and the hard place we find ourselves in. And then we have to add to that, it's not just the police department that we have to keep funded to keep our community running the way we want it to. And so this is going to be, there's going to have to be some decisions. And again, because we are a general law township, we do have the ability to determine as a community to tax ourselves to achieve the revenues to get the services, in essence, to the standard that we want to enjoy, right? So it is really up to us, the voters. If we want to fund this, then we can fund this because it's a decision we make as the voter to say, I want this level of service, and so that is how I'm going to vote. And so this is one of the few types of communities where you have that level of local control over your tax bill. So and we can't advocate one way or the other for the millage, but as a board, we can make an argument and educate the public why these millages are necessary.
Correct.
So I was gonna, sorry.
Go ahead, James.
I was gonna bring this up during my report, but I guess given the current conversation, it makes sense to do so now. Obviously, the costs of operating our township it's becoming more expensive, which is exemplified by the fact that we're spending more on police and fire while operating with less than the optimum number of personnel and making more calls than ever before. So to address these issues, obviously we need the multi-year financial plan that Mike mentioned earlier, but the only options are really to reduce services, increase taxes, or increase taxable base. And since I'm not for any more taxes, I think we need to strongly consider policies, ordinances, and zoning that's going to encourage economic growth, and to consider increasing our taxable base by encouraging development. So the 4,500 households, I think it's 4,500, 44, 45, can't continue to fund all of our operations at the current levels that they want to fund them. So I just wanted to put that out into the ether that it could in fact be our ordinances, policies, and zoning that are preventing us from achieving the tax base we need to provide the services that the residents expect. So
It's a very complicated, it's not a simple, hey, they just need more because expenses are going up. It's much more complicated than that. And Jameson, you bring out a good point. There's only certain ways you can go. Either the people that are here continue to do it, or you increase the number of people to spread it over more, or you increase the taxes, changing the way the police department is funded, rather than this hodgepodge of I think three millages plus general fund. But to do all that is not an easy thing. And we're looking at all of that right now. And you want to also, on that end, you want to make sure, what do they need? To say anybody just needs more money, everybody can use more money. What we have to make sure of, because we do have a limited number of people that are paying for this, we have to make sure that that need is there. So we're looking at all that. That's in the process. But right now before us is simply language for a millage renewal for the police department. And I have a question for you, just a point of order on the yes and the no. What was, would you clarify for me the yes and the no?
The yes and the no apply to what the voter will be choosing. So in the
I see. That's part of the millage
part,
language.
this is actually, the yes and the no are part of the millage language.
you.
That's why
Thank you.
it needed to
Yes,
be read.
it'll be a
into
yes
the-
and no on your
Yes.
ballot.
And then, as you know, the question, it is written as a question, and then the voter says yes or no. And in response, I just want to add to kind of what Jameson had said, and to what Mr. Heil had said, because that is a long-standing debate in the community. Development to lower the taxes on the individual, or, pay the individual taxes in order to preserve the environment of the island at a certain natural level, right? So there was a time when this township passed a lot of millages to buy up open space to curtail environment, because it was believed that, and promoted by the planning professionals too, that simply adding households to an island does not necessarily increase your tax base, because your expenses in maintaining the infrastructure for those additional residences kind of takes away the benefit of their tax dollars. They're never going to pay as much in taxes as you're going to spend to make sure they have sewer, water, electric, and those services. Right. So, and so to that end, I think it will be an exciting time, because in the past, the board that have been elected have been very much pro-open space, very much trying to curtail industrial development, residential development, and find creative ways to increase residential without impacting our natural areas, the things that we all say we love about our community, the woods and the waterfront, et cetera. So to that end, I think we will, in the next year, probably benefit from having some, what the planning people call charrettes, or public planning sessions, where community members come out and learn and discuss and say what they are in favor of. And again, your vote is going to speak for you in that regard. And then the board will listen to that. The public may not listen, the public may walk out, but the board will listen. So that's how, I know we want to get on and vote, but this actually is driving us down to that crucial point in our community, is which direction do we want to take now that we are in this crunch?
And it will. It always ends up with the taxpayer, their vote, one way or another, and we live with what they vote.
Yep.
So, any other comment?
I just have a question for
Yeah.
you, I guess, or whomever. I spoke with Ann and Derek today on a couple issues close to this, but my question to you then, Jim, is at what point would we meet, or at what point do you get together? As Mike stated, that the police department wasn't fully funded this year, or it was funded, but let's just go a step further. At what point then would we meet and try to resolve the issues that we're going to have next year then? At what point do you start that? I guess, Dwight, either you or...
Well, yeah, right now we're in the midst of talking to the department to see what are your real needs. That's the first thing you have to do, and then when we have the proper information that we can form something and say, this is the way we need to go, we need X, or we don't need X, or whatever, then we get together and we talk as a board, which way do we want to go? How do we want to do it? Here's the pros and cons. But it's right now we're in the gathering information to know what we're talking about.
And don't forget, you know this, Joe, we're in the middle of contract negotiations with the police union, the outcome of which can have a bearing one way or another on future expenditures. So it's hard to plan past what we know today until we've got some finality in that.
And all
Right,
that.
I understand that. I just wanted to make sure,
Yeah.
since what Mike said and what Ann even said, is there's got to be a point where we're going to have to get together. And the millages that are on now and in the near future, and Ann and I talked about the one next year also that's coming in, there may have to be some adjustments. So
Right.
I guess my question was, when do you start that? But okay, you answered that.
And the answer, Joe, quite frankly,
got
the
it.
answer will be as soon as possible. I
Okay.
mean, when we can, as soon as we have the information to sit down and do it, you need to do it now, regardless of when you might put something on the ballot, whether it's this year or next year. There's nothing to stop us from talking about it now, and we will.
Well, and as you can say, it's already started.
Well, yeah, and it actually is. I mean, it's just not to the point where it's ready to be sat down as a group. But anything else? Not hearing any other comments. We have a motion for the Township Board to approve the following millage language for the millage renewal to maintain current police department operations. Shall the expired previously voted increase be renewed in the total tax limitation imposed under Article 9, Section 6 of the Michigan Constitution in Groseal Township of 1 mil, $1 per thousand of taxable value, reduced to 0.9835 mils, .9835 per thousand of taxable value by the required millage rollbacks, be renewed at 0.9835 mils. 0.9835 mils per 1,000 of taxable value, and levied for a period of 5 years from 2022 through 2026 inclusive, to provide funds for the purpose of maintaining the current law enforcement operation on Groseal, specifically for police department funds, raising an estimated $674,000 in the first year the millage is approved and levied. Yes or no? All in favor of putting this millage renewal on the ballot?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we will have the millage renewal on the ballot. Thank you. All right. Next action item, that the Groseal Township Board hereby approve the attached millage request language for general fund millage renewal to read as follows. Shall the expired previously voted increase be renewed in the total tax limitation imposed under Article 9, Section 6 of the Michigan Constitution in Groseal Township of 2 mils, 2.00 per thousand of taxable value, reduced to 1.8819 mils, $1.889 dollars per $1,000 of taxable value by the required millage rollback, be renewed at 1.8819 mils, $1.889 per thousand of taxable value, and levied for a period of 10 years from 2022 through 2031 inclusive, to provide funds for Groseal Township operating purposes, raising an estimated, excuse me, $1,289,000 in the first year the millage is approved and levied. Yes or no?
Support.
Okay? And that, much like the previous renewal, this is the renewal language for our general operating fund. These operating funds do go all for our police department. The millage is up and we're merely renewing it. Obviously we have a great need for this money to keep things rolling along. Comments or questions? I think our previous comments and questions kind of talked about this as well as the police direct renewal. But other comments or questions? Hearing none. We have a motion that the Groseal Township Board hereby approve the attached millage request language for the general fund millage renewal as follows. Shall the expired previously voted increase be renewed in the total tax limitation imposed under Article 9, Section 6 of the Michigan Constitution in Groseal Township of 2.00 mils, reduced to 1.8819 mils, $1.889 per thousand of taxable value by the required millage rollback, be renewed at 1.8819 mils, $1.8819 per thousand of taxable value, and levied for a period of 10 years from 2022 through 2031 inclusive to provide funds for Groseal Township operating purposes, raising an estimated $1,289,000 in the first year the millage is approved and levied. Yes or no? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This millage language passes. Thank you. Okay. David, action number 4.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that the Groseal Township Board hereby approves the attached millage request language titled Wastewater Treatment Plant Millage Proposal to be placed on the August 2nd primary election. And the millage proposal will read as follows. Shall the limitation on the amount of taxes which may be levied on taxable property in the Township of Groseal, Michigan, be increased by up to 0.95 mils, paren 95 cents per $1,000 of taxable value, close paren, for a period of 20 years, 2025 to 2044 inclusive, as new additional millage to provide funds for paying the costs of acquiring, constructing, and equipping improvements and upgrades to the township's wastewater treatment plant pursuant to a state of Michigan legal order and mandated improvements, including paying the cost of debt service on bonds issued for such purposes. It is estimated that 0.95 mil would raise approximately $650,000 when first levied in 2025. And I guess there's a yes and no.
Support.
Support.
You want to give us a history of what's going on here?
The short version is the state of Michigan has issued an unfunded mandate with regard to the wastewater treatment plant. for improvements and expansion that have to be made. And this is the millage that's been determined to be adequate to fund that, fund the bonds over the 20-year period. 20 years? Yes.
So in looking at this in the packet, is the packet we received the other day different? Because the language looks different than what.
No, I took it right out of the packet.
Okay. Maybe I'm missing something.
There was an earlier version that might have a couple of words different or something, but that was right out of the packet.
Yeah, Derek, you want to come up?
Sure.
I don't believe you were here when we were working on that. That was Dale.
Yeah, the
And I-
ACO, yes, the
I
ACO,
was,
that's
I
correct.
worked on that. We worked for a couple of years on that to get, the state came in and said, you have to make these changes, and you will make these changes. And how are you going to do it? We had to come up with how. And then we worked out how long we would have, and we were surprised. They actually gave us longer than we thought. We thought we would have originally that we would have to have this work done like this year. And the state, I guess because we met so much and we talked so much and we showed them that we were trying to do the right thing, they actually gave us until 2025 to get this done.
Correct.
So, Derek, I'll let you speak to it.
The treasurer summarized it very well. We're required by the state to increase the overall capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. That work has to be completed by fall of 2025. So to properly plan for meeting that date, we have backed into an August primary for putting this millage request before the electorate to try to obtain the necessary funding to be able to aid in doing these state mandated improvements. In reviewing the overall cost, the engineer's estimates of the project, we're right at about $10 million for these improvements in order to comply. So we've reviewed, the bonding, amounts, percentage interest, overall payments, and have backed into a 0.95 mil request that would help to retire that bond issuance. So that bond schedule has been included in your packet and shows kind of what the amortization schedule of that bond is. The improvements basically are adding a new final clarifier over at the wastewater treatment plant and some additional work. The engineering, actually, the preliminary engineering has already been completed for that design in order to stay on schedule with the state's mandates as far as when we had to have things completed. So we've met those deadlines as far as the design. So our engineering estimates are actually pretty solid based upon the design work already being completed over at the wastewater treatment plant. This millage request is a bit unique. And we've tried to do what we could do to address what the residents' concerns, I'm sure, are going to be, and that's the overall cost of these and how they are built into the overall millage rate. Two things worth noting on this. This is actually a limited bond issuance versus an unlimited bond issuance. The difference between the two is on an unlimited bond issuance, we have the ability to modify the overall millage rate to accommodate what's necessary to pay that bond. So you actually can have a fluctuation in the amount of millages that you levy to make sure that the township has the ability to pay that bond amount. That's not what we're looking at here. This is actually a limited tax bond that we're going for. And that basically means that millage rate is fixed at whatever the voters have approved. So you won't see a variation up or down like you would see in an unlimited tax bond. In addition to that, the proposal that we're presenting is to delay this collection. So basically, pass the millage. The request is going to be to pass the millage in August, but we wouldn't actually levy this millage until 2025. And the purpose of that is to try to limit the impact on the overall millage rate for the residents. And you'll see what I'm referring to is this area here. We would actually pass the millage this fall or this summer. We would then go out and bond for the improvements that we have to do at the wastewater treatment plant. And then we would actually make the payments out of fund balance from the sewer account for your years of 2023 and 2024-25. So you'll see these bond payments that I have highlighted here would be made out of fund balance, and you wouldn't actually levy that millage until 2025 when you have some additional millages dropping off that I'm showing here with my cursor. So in the overall interest of that is to keep this millage differential as low as possible. So we have designed this in a way to try to be a bit creative to lower the impact to the residents. So that's being taken into consideration. So that millage won't actually happen until until 2025. And that's all been reviewed with bond counsel, and that's completely appropriate to do it that way. And that's what the proposal is before the board and is incorporated into this millage request. So that's the long and short of it. The state's mandating that we do the improvements. We've engineered them. We've put an estimate on it. We've reviewed a variety of different options as far as how to pay for it. And this is the best option based upon our review of the different options available. At the end of the day, being an enterprise fund, the sewer account could raise rates in order to bring in the revenue necessary to do these state mandated improvements. But when we took a look at the rates that would be necessary to be able to achieve, the revenue necessary to do these improvements, it would definitely be burdensome to the residents, increasing overall rates in the I believe it's in the action item, 50, 60, 70%, which I don't think any of our residents want to see that. We already pay enough for water and sewer on this island. If we can construct this millage in a way that has a limited impact on the overall millage rate by delaying these payments and delaying the millage levy, we want to try to do that. One other thing worth noting, the millage levy of 0.9 mils later on, that factors into the overall 5-year plan that we were reviewing at different meetings, and works well with this limitation to the extent that we'd only be looking at about a 0.43 increase on the overall millage rate when this is actually levied. So that bottom line is actually pretty good. So
That's very important, and quite frankly, not only on this, but talking about what we're going to need in the future, looking at everything. We're trying to work that in where we have some mills in the near future falling off. So despite possibly having to go for a new millage on something, in actuality, we're trying to do it so your overall millage rate is not going to change, or will change very little for you. It'll be a different millage, but it won't be any more money than you're paying right now. So we're looking at all that, and on this, since we're not going to do it until 2025, we have the time, and we are currently talking to different sources to try and get infrastructure money, trying to get the COVID relief money, trying to get money where we can that would lessen this. But what we need now, what the DPS needs to do these, they got to know that money's there. That's why we're doing this. But it actually, in fact, if we can get some other money, it can reduce the amount that we'll need.
And the supervisor makes a very good point. If the question comes up, why do this now for the money in 2025? We need to have that project completed by fall of 2025. We're looking at 2 years, 2.5 years worth of construction, engineering, project closeout, materials backlog, bonding, contracting for the work, supplies, there's a lead up to this that we have to have the funding set and available so that we know we can bond against that and we can move through that process of construction, which is going to lead us all the way up until fall of 2025 if we start now. So, not the chicken before the egg type of thing. This is the egg before the chicken. We're making sure that we're doing things correctly and putting this on a schedule that works.
And another thing that if we don't get it done on time, we are subject to some pretty heavy penalties from the state. So, I mean, nothing good comes from us not having the money ready to go. It's better to know we have the money and not have to go after all of it rather than be scrambling to get money and end up not being able to complete it and end up with fines and a higher cost of the overall project.
So
Go ahead.
The other slide? Yeah.
Not a lot of people have probably seen this, right? So the bulk of the funding really starts after the litigation, millages fall off by 1.5 plus.
Yeah, you've got this SSES debt and litigation judgment, and, most of these drop off in 2026.
So that's how you kind of arrange this, so take advantage of that, not to increase taxes. You just go down a little bit. And
Down
so-
farther.
So this thing's fully loaded, so if you go back to column F, which I believe is 22, 23, is that correct? Is that it? right
I
there?
think so.
Yeah, 22, 23, yep.
So
Sorry.
the whole total increase to the taxpayer based on everything you got planned that year is 130 for the average household, correct?
Correct, yep,
And you
.87.
run that all the way across based upon everything you do. There's a road millage included in there, right?
Yes, and a fire millage as well has been,
Not a police.
you know,
I have
estimated.
to make that point, so that's something we need to talk about more, but it's a good idea as to what you're proposing or planning on. It's not etched in stone, it's not approved per se, right? But it's a good plan of everything you want to get done, what it's gonna cost the taxpayers. And then I think if you scroll down there, if you completed all this, you kind of show them what they're gonna be getting for it, right? And I think
Correct.
priorities on the main plan, so
Yeah, and this is a great
I
document.
think we
and-
need to share it with the public.
Yeah, and
Probably hard
it's
ask.
good to see how everything impacts the bottom line. That, just worth noting that the two renewal requests that were put into the, that were part of the action items this, today, those have both been, built into this as well, yep.
Yes.
okay.
Yes, you may.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad Supervisor Budney brought that up, and just an underscore how old this project is,
Yeah.
right? So this didn't just happen, and this is something we've been working on. I don't want to overstate, but close to 20 years. And I think it goes back to when in the state of Michigan, there was a large problem with the infrastructure of wastewater going into the Great Lakes through infill in the water, the sewer lines, getting rainwater infill, townships like ours not having enough capacity to hold the sewage during a 100-year rain, having to release gray water, unprocessed sewage into the rivers, into the lakes, because we didn't have the capacity. And so the whole thing started with upgrading our water and sewer lines, with building that massive tank that we have over there, updating the technology. And it's a project, that we have a little bit of a gun to our heads because we have to do it. But we've also been working with the state for a long time to maximize our flexibility in getting this project done in such a way that it's not punitive to our community.
Yep,
That's
and,
it.
go
I
ahead.
was going to say that's a good point because this ACO that we're working on right now is the 6th ACO.
Right.
It's not the first, it's the 6th. And part of the changes are just standards that are changed by the state, and all of a sudden you have to comply. Your facility was perfect yesterday. They come out with new standards, now you're behind, and you have to change it.
And credit should be given to everybody that had a hand in getting this actually to 2025 with the understanding that there were these, these funds dropping off, right? These millages
That
that
was
were
a
dropping off.
big part of the push we made, was the fact that, hey, we believe if you let us do this, we can afford it, by then, because we'll be dropping millage off. A new millage will not increase the overall millage.
And that allows us to be able to design this. We're close to the finish line on those other millages. We can design this so that we can take advantage what was the original intent of doing this work when these other items fall off. And I think it's been designed that it's allowed us to do that so that impact is limited and also can be balanced against all the other, expenditures of the township and millage levy. So we can try to keep that overall cost as low as possible.
Derek, included in our package was a copy of the July 31, 2017 letter to Township Manager Ream that came from the Department of Environmental Quality with an invoice for $10,000 civil fine as a result of a discharge. When we look at sanitary sewer overflow, in other words, you can't, as I understand it, if you reach certain capacity within the plant, if you don't discharge, you risk damage and injury to existing equipment that may put you offline or certainly out of compliance for a period of time.
And even worse, back up in people's homes.
Exactly. So the idea is that if we don't do this work, we're going to have to do it eventually anyway because of the consent order, and we're going to have thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of fines, and we could wind up with the sewers backing up into people's homes. So when Uta says we have a gun to our head, I think it's a little bit stronger than even that, because if you don't do it, you're going to have the homeowners suffering, physical damage to the residents, you're going to have fines coming from the state of Michigan, DEQ, and you're going to be looking at damage potentially to the plant, even though all the work that we've done to eliminate the inflow that could possibly be done, water that was flowing in as a result of cracks or manhole issues, things like that. So we really don't have a choice.
And after all that, you would end up being forced to do it through, litigation that would end up, mandating by court action that you do that work. So this really...
You can have the damage to the homes, you can have the damage to the plant, you can have
Fines.
attorney fees and fines
Yep.
to do what you're required to do anyway. So we don't have a choice.
So we can either work with the state and work with the board and work with the residents and work with our overall finances to do this in a constructive manner that addresses our concerns, or it can be forced on us and we have to do it without a hand in designing this so that it works best for everybody. So that's kind of where we're at with this, yes.
And one of the things when we were negotiating the ACO, it was coming down to where the state says, if you won't pick what you're going to do, how you're going to do the project, we'll pick for you. So, that's certainly not something you want to happen. But we do have it. They're going to make us do it, and it really does come down to, do we do it? Do we put a charge on the utility bills, or do we do the millage? That's pretty much where we're at.
Yep. And work within, this design to minimize that overall millage impact to the residents, right? So.
We went that way simply because we do have some control that way. Putting it on your bill, it just would be unbelievable to the people. Other questions for Derek or on this?
But we will do our best to get the word out to the residents about this being on the ballot in August and kind of how this factors into everything and what it all means. That's going to be on us to do that. I appreciate your support this evening with this design and your understanding of kind of what we're trying to achieve with this. So I'm available anytime. If you have any questions about what this looks like into the future, let me know.
Okay.
Thanks, Derek.
Are we ready? Okay, David, do you have the wording? Okay. So, we have a motion before us that the Groseal Township Board hereby approve the attached millage request language titled Wastewater Treatment Plant Millage Proposal to be placed on the August 2nd primary election. The wording as follows. Shall the limitation on the amount of taxes which may be imposed on taxable property in the Township of Groseal, Michigan be increased by up to 0.95 mil, which is 95 cents per $1,000 of taxable value, for a period of 20 years, 2025 to 2044 inclusive, as new additional millage to provide funds for paying the cost of acquiring, constructing, and equipping improvements and upgrades to the township's wastewater treatment plant pursuant to a state of Michigan legal order and mandated improvements, including paying the cost of debt service on bonds issued for such purposes. It is estimated that the 0.95 mil would raise approximately $650,000 when first levied in 2025. Yes or no? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that will be added to the ballot. Thank you for that. It's one of those things you have to do. You'd rather not do it, but we have no choice. All right. Okay. Having taken care of that. Derek, I'll give you your book back later. We have the addition of action item number 5, which is a motion that the Groseal Township Board hereby approves the attached offer for property located at 19130 Meridian Road. Furthermore, the Groseal Township Board hereby authorizes the Township Supervisor and Township Manager to represent the Township of Groseal at closing, subject to the terms and conditions of this motion. Okay, and by the way, the offer to purchase was $620,000. With that, Derek, Derek or Mike, you want to talk about?
Just a quick couple of comments about the offer. The offer is being recommended for approval by our broker, by our realtor. It is conditioned upon a successful home inspection, as well as the appraisal, and then also the purchaser selling their home, which none of those issues or none of those conditions were concerning to our realtor. So she is making a recommendation that we go ahead and approve this offer.
If I read this correctly, they're putting down a substantial down payment on it. They're taking out a substantial mortgage too, but they're putting a substantial down payment on this. So
And this will all be to the benefit of the animal
it will be
shelter.
all be to the benefit of the animal shelter. They will get a very large chunk of money out of this. Julie Cordes and her group did an excellent job of renovating that house, and believe me, that house inside basically had to be gutted and redone, and she did a very nice job, and really did it on a very tight, I won't say tight budget. She was tight about the money she spent, and we got a very good deal. So even after backing out from those funds that we're going to get, or they're going to get, the cost of putting that house in order, they're still going to have a huge amount of money for the animal shelter. And as I said earlier, that house went up for sale Thursday or Friday and was sold, and basically was sold by Sunday. So for $620,000, it has to look pretty darn good. and they really did do a nice job on it, so.
The fancy tiles in the bathroom were worth it. And by the way, in honor of Woody, we are paying for those. We paid for those tonight. They were in the bills.
And special thanks to the board. This is a little bit of a unique situation with contractors and realtors and all the different things that come along with the sale of a residential property. But you know, to the supervisor's point, all the people that played a part in this, the board included. You know, thanks to
Tony
everybody.
Gray.
Tony Gray.
Tony was, you know, Tony, you know, was wise enough to make a comment to the lady to maybe think about, when she said she wanted to get rid of the house, maybe donate it. And it wasn't a lot, but it was probably, it was the thing that got the whole ball rolling.
The ball rolling.
Yeah, there were a lot of people involved. They did a nice job, and it's going to be very beneficial. The animal shelter should not have to worry for a long, long time. How, any other questions by the board?
No, I just think it's
Yeah.
great news and
Yep.
hope it goes through.
Okay. Hearing none, we have a motion that the Groseal Township Board hereby approve the attached offer for the property located at 19130 Meridian Road. Furthermore, the Groseal Township Board hereby authorizes the township supervisor and township manager to represent the township of Groseal at closing, subject to the terms and conditions of this motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We will close on this house. Thank you. Thank you, Julie, and your crew. Nice job. And that ends our action items. So we'll move to reports. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a few things. As you know, there's 2 elections coming up this year. We haven't had an election since 2020, so everyone is getting into training mode, and Brian has already put out the first newsletter and invitation to existing poll inspectors. If you are interested in becoming a precinct inspector, a receiving board volunteer, and if you're interested in applying to become a part-time clerk's office assistant for the duration of the election season, please contact Deputy Clerk Brian Friel either by phone or by email. He is still looking for people and still taking applications. We talked a lot about funding and millages today, and I don't want to belabor the point, but you know, before every meeting, Chief Beaudry calls me and tells me what some of the totals have been for the Groseal Fire Department. And he made a difference today in the sense that he said this month alone, they have responded to 49 rescue calls in April alone. Year to date, 193. And year to date, there have been about 17 fire calls. And one of the conversations we're having on the Fire Commission is the changing nature of small town fire departments. Volunteer departments used to be basically focused on putting out fires. And now that focus has very much changed to be first responders, in addition with our police officers responding to rescue calls, ambulance calls, etc. And so there's a huge amount of training that goes into that for our fire volunteers. And as you know, they have to make a certain percentage of calls, and they are volunteers in the sense that they are not strictly employees, but the township does work with them, and we provide them health insurance. And with those costs going up, even for a volunteer force, it's become a burden for our fire department. So to that end, I just wanted to let everybody know our our chairperson, Jerry Bringard, Chief Beaudry, and I, and some of the commissioners have been meeting with Supervisor Budney already, with Finance Director Ann Darsnick, with Township Manager Thiel, to work out our projections for the next few years. I think we feel confident that the financial support is there through 2023, December 2023. But again, there is a difference in philosophy. Some people would like to have the money set in place before we go into the budgeting process, even though it isn't needed until a year later. So what we're talking about right now is what are our strictest needs. How is all this going to, work out? And there is a possibility that we'll be coming before the board and saying we would like to place a millage proposal on the ballot, maybe at the end of 2022 or maybe in 2023. But the process is in place. And the reason I wanted to make this statement today is that I want to start speaking up more in the community for the value of our fire department per se. For a volunteer force, we have a tremendous service at our disposal, and we're very fortunate, and I think everybody here knows how fortunate we are, that these men and women are willing to respond to these calls day and night, holidays and work days, school days, birthdays, and we want to make sure that they know that we are working to not only maintain and establish a level of support that we need, but that it shows how much we also value their service and their willingness to do this work. Volunteer fire departments started out in a whole different economic climate, and the world is changing, but I think we still see the best value for us in maintaining a volunteer fire department along the lines that we have. And I just want to assure everybody, even though you don't see a lot about it on social media or on the evening news, we are working to maintain and establish those lines of support. And so that's all I would like to say for my report tonight.
Thank you, Uda. And along those lines, it's very simple. This township could not afford a full-time fire department with that many members. I mean, we could have a full-time fire department of 5 people, something like that. Obviously, the service and what we would get for that is much different. So the structure we have fits us nicely. It's a question of what can we afford even for that, and that's what has to be looked at. Just like quite frankly, in any other department, what can we afford to do? And when we come to the people, if we come to the people for a millage, we want to be able to say to them, not just this department needs more money, but here's what you're getting for it. Here's why we need to do this. And that's what we will pledge to do to you. Do for you is to be able to tell you why if we're going to ask for anything. Thank you, Uda. David.
Thank you. For the month of March, Groseal Township had a total of $13,873,000 invested in various accounts, and these accounts generated interest income in the amount of $2,590 at an average interest rate of 0.125%. And in the finance office are currently working on compiling our fiscal year-end reports and preparing for the upcoming annual audit. And as always, the treasurer's office, see Andrea at the cashier's window for 2022 dog tags and dog park passes. And The next DPS commission, we did not have a meeting in April. The next meeting is scheduled for May 10th. And the next Community Recreation Commission meeting is May 5th. And repairs on Pier 4 at the marina are ongoing and hopefully should be completed here shortly. And Island Fest, just a reminder, is June 3rd to the 5th. And if you have any desire to volunteer, I know if you contact Kim at the Recreation Department, she'll be able to take your information. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, David. Trustee reports, starting with Joe.
I sit on the Airport Commerce Park Commission, and they meet third Monday of each month, 6 o'clock in this room. And I have a short report tonight. The Pirates Cove construction project across the street is moving along as planned. And Janelle, our new manager, she's been there approximately 5 months now. She's settling in each month that she's there. She getting a feel for everything and fitting in just fine. She has gotten her certifications that you need to run an airport. And all in all, things are going very well there. That's it for me tonight.
Thank you, Joe. Jameson.
Good evening. I sit on the Zoning Board of Appeals, which has not met this month, so I have nothing significant to report.
Thanks, Jameson. Carl?
Good evening. I have the pleasure of sitting on Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission as well as the Greenways Open Space. The report for the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory is that we are going to have a special meeting with Mary Bowling, who is with the Downriver Linked Greenways, regarding an engineering study for a path between Groseal Parkway along West River to Bellevue and then along Bellevue to Meridian. That bike pedestrian path would connect the Trenton link with Downriver Linked Greenways to Groseal, and that path would then link up with the Meridian and Bellevue part of that trail that runs north-south along the spine of Groseal. That will be scheduled. We are working on scheduling that tomorrow. There will be notice in the Township website, Groseal Now, and everything else that Brian Friel can manage to put together. The public will be invited. We are specifically inviting the DPS because of infrastructure, the Rec Commission because of the impact on Water's Edge, as well as Groseal Golf and Country Club. All of those are encouraged to send representatives so that Mary and the engineers can understand what the concerns are about any kind of a bike path along that proposed route. That's funding for that study was previously approved by the board last year. It is not costing the township anything for the study and is essentially feasibility, and all are welcome to attend. We will have that posted. Second commission I sit on is Greenways Open Space, and several things there to note is that work on the completion of the Ferry Gauge Trail has been started, but again, it sounds like an old saw. We are still running into problems with rain. John Keim and I were there on Saturday. We had an inch of rain Friday night, and it was difficult to put any kind of equipment in there. We managed to put a 5,000-pound skid steer in there that was buried up to the hubs. Took a half an hour to dig it out. John is throwing in gravel there as a base so that we can have something to keep the wood chips separated from the mud, create kind of a crown so everything will drain off. Even with the ditching that was done, it has been absolutely miserable to finish that trail. But John and with Derek's cooperation have been doing a great job. It's just a matter of hopefully the weather will dry out and we can wring all this water out of the system that seems to be so persistent. The second thing is that the ditching in Meridian Woods, Kathy, this is near your house, the open space behind Thorpe and all of the other finger courts that come off of there. When we look at the ditching that was there that had been done decades ago, there was deadfall, there were trees, there were all kinds of obstructions to it. Water is supposed to drain from essentially the north part of Meridian Woods, when we look at Manchester, down to Rucker, where the drain then extends underneath the road and out into the river. That had become seriously choked. We are now down to approximately the last 300 or 400 feet for that. In the last rains that we have had, when I spoke with Bill Stevenson earlier, he lives on Park Lane and Manchester, and he said they have had greater flow. There's been no problems with flooding. The citizens along that area have been receiving some relief because there are some pictures Bill had posted with kids out there in kayaks and canoes floating up and down Manchester. The ditching seems to have done a significant amount of good work in relieving those areas, those residents, from the flooding that was in some places 1.5 feet deep or deeper. The third thing is, and this is really important, Dump the Junk has been scheduled for Saturday, May 21, between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m., again at the DPS building. And that is our annual. We're hoping to possibly do another one in the fall. There will be postings. Bill Stevenson is going to be working with Brian Friel. We're going to be posting things of what you can bring and what you cannot bring, and that's in coordination with Donna Deppa. Currently, we are looking at no concrete, electronics, or hazardous materials. However, if you contact Donna at 676-4422, extension 227, again, 676-4422, which is the Township's general number. Donna specifically is at extension 227. They do have vouchers where you can take your hazardous materials to Westland. We had one citizen that told us that when she had some hazardous materials to dispose of, think of electronics, think of paint cans, think of that kind of material, it would have cost her $125 to dispose of it. Because she had the voucher, she was able to go out there and they charged her nothing for that. So that is an excellent resource. Again, it bears repeating, 676-4422, extension 227. We're asking Brian Friel to post all of the information regarding Dump the Junk on the website, Groziel Now, and every other imaginative social piece of media that Brian can come up with. Final report consists of Earth Day. As you may recall, Earth Day was last Friday. It was involved a program on Saturday at the Episcopal Church. More than 100 people attended. There were various programs. Probably the highlight of the afternoon was delivery of a speech by John Hardick, who has been probably the leading environmentalist downriver for the last 2 or 3 decades. Attendance was good. There was the cleanup. It was something very, very worthwhile for the community, and my understanding is, I was not able to attend, but my understanding it was very well received. Although with the good weather, nobody wanted to be inside. They wanted to be outside, 80 degrees, warm and sunny. But it was well attended, and the cleanup went very, very well as well. And that concludes my report, other than to say thanks to Derek and John Keim for helping us make that trail a reality. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Carl. Mike?
Okay. I sit on the, I'm the liaison for the police department, and they continue to be busy. Calls are up just month over month, 22%. We know that, if you look at a 10-year normalized trend, calls concerning action are up about 37%. So, and even though, we're looking for, to have a department fully staffed with 25 people, that's still below national averages. So the police department's doing a good job with, less than normal personnel for the size of this community. They work hand in hand, by the way, with the fire department. I don't know if all residents know it, but about 90% of the time, the police show up first for all emergency calls. And they're equipped to take emergency action in about 4 different areas. And as a community, I think we're very fortunate that we have a police and fire department that do work so well together. And I think it is truly a bargain to the residents. And to that end, I've asked the police department to work with the fire department to have an open house this year. I know they were kind of working on it already, but I thought they should do it jointly and potentially provide a video to demonstrate to the community how they work together to keep people safe when emergencies occur. They do a great job. So we got all that going on. We are hiring some people. We're started the process to replace Lieutenant Pellin with the next lieutenant, and all those in-house employees that have 15 years of experience will be eligible to apply for that position. And really, that's about it. Our new officer that we swore in last board meeting on the 11th, Officer Hurtado, is doing a phenomenal job. Everybody seems to be happy with him, so things are going pretty well. We're working towards an accreditation that will, limit our legal liability in the event that we have disruption here on the island from protests and things like that. So a lot of moving parts, all in the right direction. Appreciate the community's support for both police and fire, and hopefully they'll be able to continue to service all of us at a very high level. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Township Attorney, any report, Tom? Thank you. Derek?
Just a couple of real minor items, just to update the board. The contract was signed with the bridge engineers, so they've been kicked off to start their work. So that's in process. The sidewalk out here, Trustee Porcelli had mentioned Pirates Cove has been busy out there. They're going to be doing their road cut going into their facility this week. It was actually supposed to start today, but I'm assuming with the weather they delayed that. So the bike path along Rural Road here will be closed for about a week. And we'll get notices out to the residents about that, but just look for the signage. You won't be able to miss it. They will re-gravel that road cut or that driveway cut in when they're done, and they anticipate that to be completed by Friday. So just a notice to the residents that they'll have to find an alternative route here along Rural Road when that does occur. Trustee Bletcher had mentioned Earth Day. I was able to attend that on Saturday, and it was a really good event on a great weather day. Kids were able to make some birdhouses, and that was really nice. And they had a lot of nice events planned around that day, and thanks to all those that put that on. And then last but not least, Dan Vinay with Priority Waste is in the audience tonight, so I want to thank him for attending the meeting this evening on behalf of Priority. So I wanted to acknowledge him for that. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Derek. I just have a couple of short things. I wanted to mention that as far as our commissions and committees, we are still looking for applications for the Zoning Board of Appeals for the alternate position on that commission. We have our 7 people who sit there, but we also have an alternate in case somebody is away, that we can have a full complement. So we're looking for that alternate. Island Beautification Committee has 4 openings. Greenways Open Space has 1 opening. So if you can, I believe you can get the application online. You can come down and pick it up here, and you can certainly talk to Margie about it if you're interested. In the past, some people, a few people have asked about us looking into solar energy, using solar for the township. Well, we did that, and interestingly, DTE told us they really don't have a lot of programs, and in fact, it would cost us more on a monthly bill for solar than we pay now. And more interesting was the fact that they mentioned that solar energy in Michigan is not good. Just because of our weather and where we are, we don't get the full benefit of solar energy. So anyway, we did look into it, Judy, and right now it certainly doesn't seem to be fiscally responsible to go that route, and that's with the encouragement of DTE. Downtown Development, which is a commission I sit on, or board I sit on, I just want to make you aware that they're beginning a project to put art on Macomb. art in the form of sculptures, art in the form of murals on buildings, art on the road at crossings, plaques, historical plaques at various places. They're just getting going on that, but in the future, it could be spruced up with some interesting things to look at. And finally, for Woody, we have no legal fees at this meeting for you, Woody, but we'll keep you in mind. God bless you. And that's the end of my report. No discussion items, so again, we have public comment on any topic. Three minutes, please, and just state your name and your address where you live. Anyone? Mr. Heil.
It wasn't an individual, it's, I guess, planning practice, right? Planning knowledge in the planning community.
There are people who are gaining from it, who they're giving a gift to the future. When we talk about developing this community, I think we should keep that in mind. We have a tremendous amount of things here to offer. 3 golf courses, 3 yacht clubs, an airport, very good health facilities. A $600,000 house is a possibility today. When you sit down there, and I'm just off the top of my head, you take the north side of the south, the golf course where we wanted to put the condominiums or whatever. You got 33 structures there, say at $500,000 apiece. How much are you adding to the monthly payment when you have this? It doesn't, in proportionate terms, amount to anything. I mean, it's not like in building a whole new community. You're just running some pipe to some existing infrastructure. I think you need to be able to look at that in a broad scope as an example of the way to consider things in the future. And I just wanted to clarify that, and I commend you.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Tom, did you raise your hand? Oh, Greg.
And there is somebody sitting behind the podium, but
Greg Karmazin, resident of Macomb County, taxpayer, homeowner, 21228 East River Road. First of all, I just am glad to see that there's progress being made on the multi-year financial plan. This was a big issue that came up in the 2020 election. Those of us in the community that worked on the 2020 election campaign team platform, this was one of the key points that the candidates that ran on that platform had promised to the community. And we've made some progress. You can see the outlines of it tonight, but there's a lot more that needs to be in that plan. Certainly, we want to see the essential services fully funded. As Trustee Jarecki had said, we are not fully funding the police, and we don't have enough manpower for 3 road patrols on all shifts, and that, of course, is one of the biggest concerns that I think people in the community have about, essential services. There's $1 million COVID grant that the township has received. We don't see that in the plan yet. There's the $625,000 that of course is going to be received from this fantastic purchase of the house. We'd like to see that in the plan, and we'd like to see all the unfunded liabilities. For 20 years, the unfunded liabilities in this community have actually grown, and I believe the percentage funding has declined in that same time period, as well as the absolute number. So that's a major issue that has to be addressed. And, until we also see the facilities, facility maintenance, capital improvement plans, until this is all in a plan, taxpayers really don't know what they're looking at. They really don't know what their total bills are going to be in the future. And I think you have the opportunity to do that, to put that together so that people can see what they can expect to pay. And certainly if you're going to be raising taxes later this year, that's something that should be in place before you go out to the voters and ask them to raise their taxes for any purpose, whether be any essential service or anything. So I think until that happens, there are going to be a lot of questions about things like I see in the plan. There's a 1.4 mil tax increase for roads, and I think people are going to want to understand what is the total bill and how does that play out. And I'm glad to see the outlines of that tonight. But there's a lot more that needs to go into that plan. Finally, I just want to mention that, of course, everyone knows the West Jefferson repaving project is ongoing, and that's a good thing, of course. But I'm not sure if that includes any of Bridge Road. And Bridge Road between the toll bridge and the intersection Jefferson is just getting worse and worse and worse. And the extent that the Township Board can do anything about that to encourage the county to fix that road, please try and do what you can, because that thing has been, the condition of that road has been declining for over 15 years. And I've come here many times wearing different hats. And of course, I'm just coming here as a citizen taxpayer tonight to advocate again, see if you can get the county to fix that road.
Yeah, you're right. I do not believe that is part of their project, but I will talk to them about it.
Well, I can tell you, in wearing a past hat, when I worked with the bridge company back in 2006 to 2011, I personally talked to Riverview officials about that project and county officials. Okay, and Riverview said anything that's south of the boat ramp, they don't care about. They see that's Grove Seal's issue. Okay, now, when I've talked to Grove Seal in the past, they've said, well, it's in Riverview, we can't do anything about it. Somebody's got to step up and be a leader on this issue. And
it is a Wayne County road.
I understand.
It is a Wayne County road, but you're right.
But there's got to be an advocate.
And there
for
has
it.
been talk in the past, and it has been just flat turned down by Wayne County, but under a different regime.
Yeah, well,
So-
I just encourage you to try it again, because we all know this. We know that the county, the Parkway Bridge is not in as good a condition as some people will say it is. I mean, right now, with the Michigan Department of Transportation, that bridge is rated in poor condition. And I think there's going to be more information coming out on that soon. So I'm glad that the township has a bridge engineer to help advise the board and other township officials on this, because there's a lot more to understand about the condition of that. And this might be the ideal time to fix Bridge Road, to widen that road and make it appropriate for any kind of maintenance that might have to be done on the Parkway Bridge in the future. This is the opportunity to do it. The county's got the personnel, the contractors are right there. So this would be the year to do it. So I encourage you to do what you can on that. Thank you.
Ms. Walker.
Kathy Walker, Thorpe Court. I know I sound like a broken record, but I'm very disappointed tonight that you didn't find money for that extra policeman so that we would have 3 on the road. And I just hope to God I don't come up to this desk someday and say, if we would have had the 3rd policeman, someone would be alive. I wish you would revisit that and find the money. There's always money in the budget. You just have to find it. And that, David, you can do, and Ann can do it. You've got a lot of money there. You can put together a little bit more and save. It's safety for somebody. And I hope to God no one passes away because you don't have that 3rd person. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, Bob Zelasco.
Bob Zelasco, Blauvelt. I too, following Kathy's comments, was a little disappointed. We approved a renewal for the Public Safety Department, but yet we know that the department is out of money. Annie already gave you the figure. She gave you $250,000. And if we follow the same process that we have been by taking it out of the wages and can't pay the people, I'm very concerned that we could lose another police officer. You say you're working on a plan? That's fine. With all due respect, plan should have already been done. This is something like Wayne County saying, we're starting on the plan after the bridge went down. And we still haven't got all the plan. Mike's comments when you go in and you're going to walk into that booth and you're going to vote for whatever millages are on there. If I have to look at a millage that's going to maybe get rid of a pothole, if I have to look at a millage that's going to keep my toilet backing up, but knowing that I don't have enough money to support my public safety, and having that first responder there, that's going to be on my mind. Derek did a nice job in his presentation. I agree with everything he said. But again, public safety is number one. We really need to start getting into this. I'm sorry the commission didn't bring you an updated 5-year plan. Then you would have had the information, the questions that you were asking. Okay? So, again, following her comments, Mrs. Walker's, public safety is still number one. The fire department does do an excellent job, but they launch off that first responder. And it is so important. Again, flushing my toilet, dodging a pothole, yes, they're important, but not as important as having somebody to get there in time to save my life. Thank you.
Anyone else? Tom.
Tom Snyder, 8448 Rucker. Having been somebody who used our emergency folks to help save his life approximately 5 months ago, I also believe that it's very important to have first responders at your home. But I will tell you that at this point in time, one of the nice things tonight is I didn't hear the word defunding, because at the last meeting, a lot of folks were using the word about defunding the police department. The budget, after the last meeting that I attended, I decided to look up the budget, and it looked like the police budget went from 3.7 to 3.9 million, which is an increase of $200,000. That's not defunding. Do I believe that we would all love to have a police department that is so overstaffed that it's been wonderful? Yes. Governing is about choosing. Governing is about figuring out what's best for everybody. And it's difficult decisions you guys have to make, but you're making it under the circumstances in which you have. If you need to have more funding, do you go to the citizens to have a separate millage? I don't know that answer. Do you figure out how to change the budget? I don't know if I know that answer. But under the circumstances that we have, we've increased the budget by $200,000, and we now have to allow the chief, the deputy chief, and the soon-to-be lieutenant to figure that part out. I mean, is there a way to find more drug forfeiture money to help with the budget? That may be an option. Everybody brought up different ways to try to figure out, get more funding here. I don't think there's anybody on this island who believes that there should be less money for police because everybody wants to be safe. Everybody wants help. Everybody's got to go through that stuff. But on the same token, you have decisions to make and you've got budgets to worry about and you have to figure that out. So I wish you, all of the 7 of you, nothing but the best to figure that part out and figure out what you need to do to make it best for the residents. And I just wish you guys the best.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else? Seeing none.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Again, no one opposed. We are done for the day. Thank you. Our next meeting is May 9th.